Welcome back, everybody. This is the Drones Down Under podcast. I'm Danny. I'm the host this week. Got thrown under the bus on that one. Gentlemen, how are we all?
Yeah, good.
Mate, thanks, Danny.
Mate, it's been a very exciting week in the drone industry for commercial and creatives alike. The Mavic 3 was launched, very anticipated last few years. I'm looking forward to having a bit of a chat about that. We also have a new type of drone on the market. Sean, can you tell me the name of that drone? Because I can't remember.
The V-Copter. I think it's by 00 Robotics.
Yeah, 00 Robotics.
Yeah.
That's going to be a pretty awesome drone. Looking forward to having a bit of a chat about it.
It looks very cool.
It does.
I'll bring up the Mavic 3 so we can show all the listeners as well.
You are a gentleman and a scallop.
Something I prepared earlier.
So this is the Mavic 3. Straight off the bat, guys, what do you think of it?
It looks quite nice. It does look very slick.
It is a very sexy looking drone. I'm not going to lie.
It is.
Beautiful.
So I guess
you and cones and drones, sexy.
There's nothing wrong with technology being sexy, Brendan.
No, not at all. No, but I think it's a very good looking drone. It looks very similar, but very different at the same time to the rest of the models.
Much more, it looks very aerodynamic. Seems like it's got a lot more cooling on it, which I'm guessing with the amount of processing that's gone inside this thing, it needs that cooling.
Mm-hmm. I find it looks a little. I think the body wise, it's more comparative to the Mini than it is the Mavic 2 and the Mavic 1.
With a mix of the DJI FPV drone chucked in there with the raised legs.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But it's definitely looks a lot more like them than it does the previous Mavic anyway.
Yeah.
Yep. The legs or the arms look really thin compared to some of the other models.
They do actually.
They mentioned in the original ads when the drone was launched, was it a couple of days ago now, that it's actually meant to be stronger. But it looks really? A little bit flimsier to me, like just initial thoughts.
Looks thinner than the Mavic 2 Pro legs. I don't know if it even looks a little bit longer too. I haven't actually compared the two. But
it's slightly bigger.
Look longer.
There was a side-by-side comparison I saw, but by the look of it, guys, it's got two cameras. What do we think of that?
I was intrigued by that when I saw it. Like, I mean, it's a good idea. It has its practicality, but. Yeah, it definitely it shocked me a little bit. I'm usually used to only seeing multiple cameras on phones. But I think from memory from reading it, the top one is the zoom. Am I correct?
Yep.
And then the bottom one's just the really nice Hasselblad.
The top one's the zoom, which is trying to find the specs. It's 27 times zoom or something.
I have a feeling it's about that.
28 times.
There you go, 28 times. So it's an equivalent of 162 mil on a drone. Now, see, this is what the public is scared of when it comes to drones. You've got a stupidly awesome zoom in that. That in the wrong hands is already, the public's worst nightmare.
Well, you've seen the zoom capability on a H20T, haven't you, Danny?
Yeah, good point.
I reckon that's a little bit worse than this one.
Doesn't Sean have H20T?
Yes, he does.
But you'd hear that one coming. This one probably not so much.
Yes, that's also
very true.
Yeah.
No, I really love the Hasselblad cameras. When the Mavic 2 Pro came out, I still haven't bought one, but I was really eager purely because of that camera. And they've stepped up a notch here again with a slightly better version of that camera.
It looks like they've dropped sensor size as well.
Yes.
No, the sensor size is now a micro 4/3, so it's gone from a one inch sensor. Yeah, it's gone from a 1 inch sensor to a micro 4/3 sensor, which is the same size as the Inspire's X5S.
There you go.
The only difference between that is it now has a electronic shutter, which isn't the best for photogrammetry compared to, say, the old Phantoms and whatnot.
No.
Yeah. The mechanical stuff.
And I'm glad they've kept the adjustable aperture because we miss them. Obviously, the 2 Pro has it, but
yeah.
Yeah, that's
pretty exciting.
And pretty cool having the aperture.
And it even says as we're watching on the screen for the viewers, 12.8 stops the dynamic range. That's better than my Sony A6400.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's really, really good.
Wow.
Then the usual pretty shots they're going to put on the website.
Yeah, for the listeners that can't see the visual, that they've just got some image samples there taken from the Hasselblad camera and talking about their natural color solutions. It's a very, very nice camera for a drone. That's for sure.
I've always been curious about these kind of photos though. Like they could have taken this with any camera and no one would know the difference.
Yeah,
you're right.
Low light conditions.
But I mean, they always, like any tech company, man, they'll go through so much rigorous testing in the lead up. And this would have been their testing. They would have just been running around going, where can we push the limits on this thing and make a cool shot?
Where's some cool shit we can film?
yeah, pretty much.
So much higher dynamic range. That's beautiful.
What about the battery, the flight time?
Yeah, the flight time was a big jump up, wasn't it? I'm pretty sure it's about 45 minutes or something.
Right.
Let's see if we can find it. This for the listeners at home, this website is really, really visual. So to find anything, you sort of got to keep doom scrolling a bit.
Maybe just click on specs. I think that's probably.
That'd be a smart idea, wouldn't it?
All right. So weight-wise, the Cine version
is lighter.
Yeah, there we go. 46 minutes, no wind.
So usable time, what would you think that would be? And but for the listeners that don't understand usable time, you don't drain your LiPo batteries to 0%.
No.
Probably 30 to 35, I reckon.
Yeah,
30 minutes, I
reckon.
reckon.
30 minutes. Sure. But that's still a huge improvement.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And a max wind resistance of 12 meters a second. That's awesome. That can handle a beating of a wind.
Yeah, definitely.
So internal storage as well. So that's the same with some of the enterprise stuff, enterprise Mavics, right? With the Dual and the stuff, they have internal storage, but this seems like they've stepped it up a little bit.
But you're going to do much with 8 gig though.
It's enough that if you forget your SD card, you can still get a couple of shots, I guess.
Yeah.
Which should be part of the pre-flight checklist anyway, right?
Exactly.
Right. We've also kind of brushed over it. This Cine version with a 1 terabyte SSD, obviously we'll talk more about it, why you need that 1 terabyte SSD built into it.
Yeah. This definitely needs the bigger hard drive for the listeners at home. The Cine version has the Apple ProRes encoder in it. And basically the data used to capture with the ProRes, you need a lot more than 1 terabyte, to be honest. But
go buy 3 spare hard drives for home if you're going to buy the Cine version.
Yeah.
And look, quick.
And to be frank, for the listeners out there and anyone contemplating looking at the Mavic 3, to be honest, unless you're looking at getting into the commercial video side of things or cinematography specifically, you probably don't really have the need for it. The normal Mavic 3 is all the same thing, just without the ProRes and with the smaller hard drive inside it. That's for most of our listeners, I guarantee you that's pretty much all they would need. But the Cine is pretty damn cool at the same time having the ProRes.
For all the people that may not understand, Ty, can you explain what ProRes 422 actually is?
You'd have a better understanding of that, mate, because you use it more than I do. The only time I ever use it is on these things on your phone. So
pretty much ProRes is more of just in layman's terms, I guess it's a much better codec for editing. You can play around with the footage a lot more, but with that, it fills up a lot more data. So that 1 terabyte might only be 20 to 30 minutes of video, where if you're shooting in standard 4K, that 1 terabyte would be hours of footage.
A simple explanation for the people out there, which you said prior in conversation, Danny, before we started the podcast. Basically, each frame in the video for ProRes is a raw image. So that's why the data's so high compared to a normal video. But that's also where you get the editing capability. So you can really mold and change and play around with the footage and really get quite into the nitty gritty of editing, which, it can be quite hard to do on some of the other codecs. You can't go quite as far as you can with ProRes.
One thing that's also just stood out to me is the max video bitrate, 200 megabit. That's huge.
I think the Mavic 2 was about 100, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was only 100. The Air 2S was 120, but 200 is better than the Inspires from memory. And also 4K 120. 4K 120, that is going to be juicy slow-mo now.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
For people that, I guess, that don't understand, what's the benefit of having a high bit rate?
It's the amount of information stored in that video. I don't know the exact technical terms of it, but it just means a much higher quality video. You're not going to get as jittery, lower quality imagery. So like, for instance, the Mavic Mini 2 has 100 megabit. The Mavic Mini 1 had, I think it was 40 megabit. So it was very, very different.
Okay.
But yet again, with that, it becomes a lot more data. So if you're going to go out and buy the Mavic 3, please buy a few hard drives on the side.
It coming from someone who's been a photographer for years, it's like, end of the day, when you're getting better quality, whether it's on your stills or your video, you are going to require a hell of a lot more freaking hard drive space.
NAS drives. Look at how.
Yeah, there's a reason why I have 12 terabytes on my desk, Danny.
Shall we keep scrolling?
Yeah, keep scrolling.
Well, we got the telephoto.
Yeah, here's the zoom.
Now, I noticed as well, I've talked to a few people about this, it only shoots JPEG and only in auto mode.
Yeah.
So you can't flick to manual settings to change your shutter speed or anything. It just shoots pure auto and JPEG only.
Is that just the telephoto lens?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think that they're probably likely to, I believe there's a major update coming out early next year. So I'm sure they'll probably.
January.
Yeah.
Well, here's hoping, because it's that's a bit of a letdown if it just shoots JPEG.
I actually didn't realize that when I was looking through it yesterday. I was actually starting the assumption that you were still able to shoot RAW with the zoom, which I thought that was pretty cool to have that capability to be able to use the zoom, having the second camera, but not having the RAW capability there kind of ruins that a little bit. Just a little bit. Like, I mean, it's still useful, but it's having the zoom on there as well. But that having that in RAW that's a bit of a game changer.
Yeah. Brendan, would you use this telephoto camera for anything, for inspections and whatnot, or say with 162 mil zoom?
Yeah, maybe. Like, I was just thinking that, just trying to figure out where you would, like, obviously with, I don't know, instantly I sort of go to like a photogrammetry idea and things like that. How would you do it with a mapping perspective? Like, you could, but when you think about changing focal lengths and different cameras and things like that, when it comes to photogrammetry, it kind of becomes a bit of a problem when you're post-processing, when you're using multiple different lenses or focal lengths. It just creates a much bigger back-end issue.
Longer
it's
workflow.
not like it's not. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's not saying that you wouldn't, but maybe you would have sections where you would just you can't fly close to an item or the object of interest, and you can zoom in and you keep the same focal length the whole time at a certain distance, and then you can still get some fairly high resolution photos and map it that way. That's where my mind kind of went, but I always try and avoid having to mix multiple focal lengths when mapping and 3D modeling. It just causes more problems in the back end. So
would I be wrong to say it's probably better off for more inspections than actual photogrammetry and modeling?
Yeah, definitely.
For sure. I think so.
Well, I, as far as like a lot of the zooms go within most of the DJI range anyway, like I only sort of industry I've heard it used and applied in, it was with the H20T with a lot of your I guess your search and rescue and criminal investigations and all that kind of terrorist reconnaissance and that kind of stuff, where it comes in extremely handy. But I mean, that's also a crazy zoom. But this, I mean, like, I don't know, like, apart from maybe the inspection sense of things, I probably can't think of too many places I probably want to use it, with the fact that it's just in JPEG.
The sample images I've seen in 2x and x4 pretty good, but anything after that, it's highly pixelated being a digital zoom. So I'm thinking
digital, which would be a bit of a letdown as soon as it does that.
Yeah, well, I was interested on that. There was a digital zoom. Like, I mean, obviously I get it because they're small cameras, but I was, in my experience, digital zoom is pretty crappy. Like
even on say the new Samsungs, they got up to was it 10 times
100 times.
Yeah, 10 times. Well, there you go. So after 10 times is optical. Then you go to 30 and 100 times, and it turns digital. Like you can kind of tell what you're looking at, but it's not. It's rubbish. It's just zooming on it, rubbish pixels.
I mean, I reckon end of the day, I think, the as far as the camera goes, the selling point on this is the Hasselblad, not the zoom. I mean, it's a cool little added extra to have on there, and there will be people out there that have a use for it. But I think most of us, for the things that we do in drone land, we probably wouldn't use it too much, but there will be people out there that will use it. But definitely the selling point is that Hasselblad.
Definitely.
I reckon that they'll probably address it. That there's no competitor for them to worry about from that, whereas a dual lens. So get it out, and they could probably resolve it or address it through a firmware update.
Actually,
probably what they're going to do.
Seeing the Autel's digital zoom, I think that their digital zoom's up to like 6 times or something. I couldn't tell the difference. It looked like an optical zoom.
Impressive.
They were shooting like one of my mates up where I live. He's got one, the Autel Evo 8K or whatever it is. When you shoot an 8K and zoom in that far digitally, it looks like an optical zoom. It's really good.
It's crazy.
Really?
Who'd have thought?
Probably worth talking about too is the new sensors with the omnidirectional.
There's a clear competition with Skydio right there. That's full 360 now, which is about time. It took 3 generations.
Yeah, and then that comes into what we was talking about before with the improved return to home as well. So with the advanced return to home now, for the listeners out there that maybe haven't done any research on the Mavic, it basically now could they use an example on the website of it essentially pressing return to home and in amongst trees. And it would navigate through the trees, the safest route to get where it needs to go to get to home and land, which, I mean, again, look, most people, you probably won't use the return to home too much, but having that capability there is pretty cool.
It's pretty cool.
It's always a good little fail safe.
It's a good backup to have as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. And, it doesn't matter how good a pilot you are. I mean, everyone has those moments where you have some close calls, etc. And I think having good sensor systems like this is a game changer. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
So this video transmission as well, they seem to keep bumping up those kilometers.
They do, but yet we can't go that far. So,
15
but DJI is in China, so there's a lot more stuff you can do in China than you can do in Australia.
The good way I always look at it, the FCC version, so America, we're based on the CE version, we're able to get 12 kilometers of range. Even if I was to fly 500 meters in a very dense area, I'd expect that to have a rock steady signal the whole time. They're just bumping up the decibels of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting why they continue to increase the range when I think 90% of the world has some pretty restrictive, visual line of sight operations, but maybe they're just thinking they're covering.
Well, we have some of the strictest in the world here. Like we are kind of a leader in the safety and all that sort of stuff in the drone industry within Australia, which was surprising to me to learn actually, but we are. There's obviously, fairly similar laws in a lot of countries, but I know for sure there would be definitely places around the world where you could definitely fly that distance and it not be a problem.
Yeah.
Legally anyway.
It'd be pretty awesome to look down and see that little 12 kilometer, on your distance.
Legally. Oh, God, yeah. I mean...
Where's your drone?
It also scares me a little bit because it's like once it's going that distance, I mean, look, I'm sure we've all taken our drones to a distance we probably shouldn't have at some point, but there's a certain distance that you get to that it starts to get a bit sketchy. And it's like, to me, looking at that and going 12 Ks and me looking out the window and going 12 Ks away, I would not feel comfortable doing that.
12 Ks away, aren't you in our state? Almost.
Almost. It's a small country, but not quite that small. But yeah, it's like 12 Ks is a long, long way. Like, I mean, it is great that we have they are the distance in there. And look, you know, as time goes on with the changes and beyond visual line of sight, and they find applications for use of using these drones for that kind of stuff, they'll have the capability to do it, which is pretty cool. But obviously, as an immediate thing, it doesn't really affect us all that much.
Yeah.
Do we need to talk about the batteries? You can still travel on a plane with them. They're under 100 watt hours, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So are they a completely new design? So if you've got a Mavic 2,
different shape,
and
completely
different shape. You have to. You can't adopt the old.
After
with the new.
So after DJI was sued by Autel for the clip-in battery design, they've had to redesign their drones completely. Hence the reason why.
I didn't know that.
Well, why do you think the Mini has a slide-in battery? Same principle.
I'm impressed that someone challenged DJI and won.
They won. It's also the reason why their props aren't the push-down clip-in anymore.
Yeah, okay. That's really interesting. Again, you taught me something else I don't know, Danny. I'm always impressed.
There's a wealth of info, Mel.
Yeah. Spent a lot of time on drone news websites, guys.
Danny lives, breathes
they should be a sponsor for us.
In case anyone hasn't worked that out.
Full-time drones, part-time drones, sleep-in drones.
Everything drones.
So otherwise, though, I mean, most of this stuff was all pretty standard. Obviously, the specs of the SSD there for
700
anyone
write
remotely
speed,
interested.
Beautiful. But also in
700 read speed, 471 write speed.
Do remember
that's
as well,
still pretty good.
When you're copying that 1 terabyte to your own hard drives, how long is that going to take?
Yeah.
Like if you got just your standard Western Digital hard drive, set that going for the night because that's going to be taking a while.
I highly recommend people out there go get yourselves a USB-C based.
Just what I remember as well,
solid state drive.
How much of a mission is it to edit ProRes? It's not as easy as editing just standard 265 4K.
No.
Why is that, Danny?
So that's your general footage you get out of your normal Mavics. To edit in ProRes takes a lot more computing power. All the people
ProRes is just heavier.
Yeah. So all the people out there in Apple land should edit it on, say, the new MacBooks with the M1s. Forget about it. You're perfectly fine.
The M1s you're fine. I had an iMac. I had an iMac Pro. I was one of the few fools that decided to go out and spend the money in the hope that it would be everything that I hoped it was. In some respect, it was. A lot it wasn't, but in some respect it was. Particularly in regards to the editing and with editing with ProRes and stuff, the iMac Pro handled it pretty damn well, which I was happy about. Nice. But still nothing like the M1s.
Okay.
If people really want to go down that route of using the ProRes, I highly recommend, if you haven't already, massively upgrading your post-work hardware because you're going to need it. And I encourage people out there that are thinking about the Cine version, do your research. Like, I mean, if you don't need it, you don't need to spend the $7,000 and you don't need to be dealing with that data.
Actually, while we're talking about prices, should we bring that up as well? So the Cine version that we're talking about right now
I'll bring it up.
Oh, yeah. Also, just one little quick stab at Apple as well, because while we're at it, the Mavic 3 also has C-Type on it. Can Apple finally just drop Lightning and go to C-Type like everything else in the world?
Yeah, look, I'm an Apple man, and even I would like everything to go completely USB-C. I mean, the phones, I think you'll find the phones will go that way probably next round. I mean, USB-C is just a much better system to set up.
Do I have to sell a kidney to buy the Cine version, or is anyone looking for
just one?
Sell a kidney,
slightly
or
used. That's it.
Or your firstborn, either way, whatever works, as long as you can cover the 7.2, basically.
Wow, that is so expensive.
It is. It's really up there. Again, that's why I was saying to people, if you don't need the ProRes, because essentially that's why you're paying double. I mean, there's a few other little perks, but essentially that's why you're paying double, is for the ProRes, for the fancy controller, and for the 1 terabyte SSD. In some regard, monetary wise, it is kind of worth it, but it's not at the same time.
Yeah. So we're looking at just for the drone, one battery, the remote is almost $3,100.
That's right.
Then you add the Fly More kit, then you're looking at $4,200.
Which works out still to be a good deal, because 3 batteries plus your usual bags, filters and stuff.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
So
batteries are 270 each, I think, anyway.
For the listeners at home, with the Fly More combo, with the drone, you actually get 3 batteries, 1 charging hub, a convertible carrying case, 1 set of ND filters, which include an ND8, an ND4, an ND16, and ND32. And I don't think there's anything else in that one. Whereas in the Cine, you get all of that plus the RC controller or whatever they call it, which is the
smart controller.
The smart controller, essentially, with the screen.
When you look at the specs of that controller, it's really good. It's using the newest version of Android. It's actually the touch screen.
It's a great controller.
Nice, and it's 1,000 nits. So in complete daylight, you'll be able to see that screen perfectly.
It is a really, really good controller. There's no denying that. And I actually, when I first had a glance at all this, I hadn't seen the Cine and the combo and all the rest of the differences. And all I originally saw was the 1 terabyte SSD. And that was before I learned about the ProRes and the Cine. And I was like, 1 terabyte SSD in a drone. I'm like, that's spectacular. I'll only have so much fun with that. And then I obviously read properly. I'm like, oh, that's why they've got 1 terabyte. And I'm like, no, I won't be buying that. And I will not be shooting 20 minutes of footage to fill up my 1 terabyte.
You even think about how much a 1 terabyte SSD for your computer costs. They're still $500-$600 roughly.
Couple $100.
And you're paying for, would like to say a pretty awesome product there if you're going to use it to its potential, which I'm sure there will be people out there who will be kicking ass with that thing.
Oh, definitely. The capability of what you can do with that Cine drone. If you know what you're doing in the cinematography realm, this is a step up, because it was only the Inspires that had the ProRes, wasn't it, Danny?
Yeah.
So, I mean, for those at home, the Inspire in size compared to a Mavic is just a little bit different. The Inspire's quite large. I'd say probably, would you say almost, would be almost a meter long? Not quite that large.
And you can't fly it in the excluded category either. So.
Exactly,
no, you definitely cannot. It's a 9 kilo drone, isn't it?
4 kilo, roughly, with payload.
I thought it was heavier.
Yeah, 4.
Yeah. But anyway, beside the point. But that's the proper cinematography drone. A lot of cinema guys who use it.
The biggest difference between the Mavic and the Inspire still for me is, you still got your ProRes and a beautiful sensor and the great color science of Hasselblad, but you still can't get that dual operation where you can put the legs up on the Inspire and have 2 people operating at the same time.
Correct, and that's where that aims at the professional end of the game. I mean, if you're doing almost studio level cinematography with an Inspire, chances are if you're doing it, you're either the operator or the photographer. You're not doing both. It's too hard to do both and do it properly.
Yeah. With Inspire. One of my mates just bought an Inspire with all the bells and whistles for $6,000, secondhand, obviously, but $6,000 for a good kit. And you can buy them secondhand out there. They are getting cheaper because they are a 2 or 3 year old drone.
And they are a beautiful drone. If you're interested in the creative side of things, in particular the cinematography side of things, they are a beautiful drone. But they have their price tag, hence why we were talking about the secondhand.
But I guess while we're talking about the price and the Mavic 3, I guess we'll wrap it up with Sean's going to mention a little bit of an offer for all of our listeners and viewers.
Yes, our friends at D1 Store, they're offering $100 off. So use the code TAKE, TAKE 100, and visit d1store.com.au. And
no spaces, by the way, guys.
We'll put the discount code and instructions in the caption.
Across
it'll be on the screen now, I'm imagining. We'll probably put that on socials as well. And look, end of the day, guys, $100 is still $100 off. Like, I mean,
that's at least $100 to get a terabyte hard drive.
Well, that's it. I mean, look, at the end of the day, we all know drones cost money, but to get any discount is a good thing, especially on a fresh product like this, where I think it's going to be quite hard for people to get their hands on one. End of the day,
sorry, go for it, Ty.
No, you're right. You go, Sean.
I was going to say, unlike the previous ones where we probably all went for the combo because of the 3 batteries, if you look at as we already talked about, the flight time of the 1 battery, let's just call it 30 minutes for actual flight. At $3,099, it's probably not a bad option. You don't probably need to go for the extra $1,200 or $1,100, whatever it works out to.
Yeah. So you're saying it does come with? I hear you right. You said it does come with 3 batteries.
The combo.
The combo.
Yeah, the combo.
I'm suggesting go with the one that you got in your mouse, which is the standard $3,099, which is single battery, because of the flight time.
Yeah. Okay, I get you.
Because normally we went for the combo because the flight time was like 20 minutes, maybe 22 minutes. So now you got a good 10 minutes probably on top, which is probably more than ample if you want to just go down and park and fly and take some.
Definitely. I think for most people, and particularly on the consumer end of the game, and even on the professional end of the game, they probably wouldn't use more than 1 battery in general operations. But again, coming to the cine side of things, where we're going to the top end of the Mavic 3, and where you will get cinematographer guys and stuff looking at it.
And batteries, please.
Yeah, they'll want the batteries. So that's fair enough that's in that combo. But I definitely agree with you, Sean. When you have 45 minutes flight time, and about actual 30 minutes of airtime, that's more than enough for a lot of the things that you want to do with a drone.